very good evening to you and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. We are coming off a weekend of high drama in the political front. Of course, we had the long awaited PNC Congress. Some say it was not a full Congress, PNC election for executive, and of course, the main interest was the election for the new leader of the party. And as was generally expected, Aubrey Norton emerged as the leader. The two other contestants, Richard Van West Charles and Joe Harmon, trailing far behind. Norton picking up at some 82% of the votes cast. And what was also important was that there were lots of coattails, meaning that members of his slate were elected in the main. New chairman, a young man, Sherwin Holder, a new first vice president. There's a tie for the second vice president. New treasurer, young man, I think he's about 22 years old, I think. And so we have a brand new slate at the top there. And then when we come down to the 15-person executive, 14 of those positions, and I understand of the 14, 4 of the persons were on Joe Harmon's slate, and 10 of them were on Aubrey Norton's slate, giving Aubrey Norton quite a big lead in the executive of the party. And then the leader of the party, I understand, gets to co-op 5 more members. So he can co-op 5 more. The executive can co-op 5 more. So it seems as though Aubrey Norton not only won by a wide margin, but he has gotten the executive that he wanted. And so there have been lots of discussions. Would Norton continue to govern as a maximum leader, or would he take a different approach? There is also the question of whether Mr. Harmon would remain as opposition leader, or whether there will be a move to remove him. Whether Aubrey himself would go into parliament, that would mean recalling people and all that stuff. So there's a lot there. So that's a big issue. Norton, of course, said what his top priorities would be in the short run, rebuilding the party, of course, but he says he'll take a hard line on the chairperson at GCOM, seeking a removal, the chief education, the chief elections officer. We also hear him says that he is going to stand in the way of the PPP seeking to raid the National Resource Fund, the oil money, and he's going to go after a new voters list. Those are some of the things that he says would be his priority. Today, we heard the stuff there of his position vis-a-vis the private sector commission and the party's attitude on this leadership for the private sector. So there is a lot there. He also said that he would pursue vigorously the reinvigoration of the Partnership for National Unity and the larger coalition. So those are some of the things that he has put forward as priorities for him. Of course, on the other side of the aisle, commentators who are friendly to the PPP have been saying that his priority should be crossover votes. So they have their priority for Norton. um, and that he should turn his face against any kind of militancy against the PPP, should go into parliament and become a very tame and loyal opposition. That's what we are hearing from the pro-PPP commentators on that side. And of course, commentators on Norton's side of the aisle, what some people say people who are to the left of Norton are saying Norton should pay attention to rebuilding the party's relationship with its base. So that's quite a bit. And I have a team tonight which is going to try to tease out some of these questions. We have Dr. Henry Jeffrey, who's been missing in action for quite a while, but he's back. Mr. Christopher Ram, who has become a fixture in recent weeks, and Adam Harris, who was on with a panel of journalists before the election, and he did express some strong views on what he thought at that time would be the outcome of the elections. I want to welcome everybody down. Welcome down to Politics 101. It's a big night. Tonight, of course, we're going to have the panel. And on Thursday night, we're going to have Aubrey Norton himself on for a one-on-one. Before that, we'll have Stanley Ming weighing in on the significance of Norton's election. So we are going to pay attention to that. As we come on tonight, we got news that the Court of Appeal, has ruled that it has jurisdiction to hear the appeal of the petition ruling by the Chief Justice. As you remember, the Chief Justice had ruled, she had thrown out one of the petitions by the election petitions I'm talking about, by the coalition, and on a matter of technicality, on the grounds that Mr. Granger, the leader of the list, was late in his submission of documents, and she had thrown it out. The coalition appealed, and the government argument was that on matters of election, the Court of Appeal did not have jurisdiction. Of course, the coalition argued otherwise. And today, the Court of Appeal, in a 2-to-1 ruling, said that it does have jurisdiction. Not been able to listen or read the ruling, so I can't speak to the reasons that they have advanced. But what this means is that if the representative of the PPP list, Mr. Jack Dio, appeals, then the case will have to go to the CCJ for a final determination. If he does not appeal, it means that the case is then thrown back to the High Court for a hearing and determination. That's big news as we come into the program tonight. We're going to be talking, like I said, about Aubrey Norton's election, but since is the news of the moment, I will open this evening by asking our panel for comments on the ruling by the Court of Appeal. First of all, welcome, Dr. Jeffrey. Christopher Ram, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Adam Harris was here with us. He has stepped away for a while, but will be back shortly.
Thank you very much.
Christopher, let me start with you. What do you make of the ruling by the Court of Appeal?
I read about it. I haven't read the details. I think if it ruled on the question of whether it has jurisdiction, that's a different issue from whether it simply means that it is saying that we can hear the case. Now, the Constitution talks about exclusive right of the High Court. So it's interesting that it means that if the Court of Appeal has jurisdiction, then you're right, it can go all the way to the CCJ. because that element of exclusivity of the High Court is not how the Guyana Court of Appeal sees the matter. It's interesting, usual 2-1, and we hope it doesn't get caught up in the politics, but it really is addressed as a matter of law. How quickly it's going to be heard by the Court of Appeal, and then whichever side, I guess, will want to go to the CCJ, and that again we are looking at several months down the road. But it's interesting. Our constitution is being tested, and it's good that the courts are playing their role. They are the arbiter after all. They're one of the certainly the legal guardrails. So let them do their work.
What was your own view of the jurisdiction of the Court of Appeal? Or do you think that there was some exclusivity, or there is exclusivity as far as these elections matters are concerned?
I did think that you see, we have to remember that at that stage we did not have the CCJ for one thing, but I thought that the provision that it's the High Court that should deal with it was because of the need to resolve election issues as speedily as possible. But there's always a different opinion, David, and one obviously respects it. It will be interesting to read the full decision before one can make a more informed response. But I'm of the view that you believe in the rule of law, the Court of Appeal has ruled, then its judgment must be respected and the process must take its course.
Dr. Jeffrey, what do you think of the ruling? What's your preliminary thoughts on the ruling?
Well, I always thought, of course, that largely because the CCJ did make the point when we were going there during the 2020 election that at the end of the day, you should go to election petition that will get to become final, will again perhaps reach the CCJ. And therefore, I have always thought that this matter should not end at the High Court. That was my feeling. Not only because I believe that the High Court was, I can't say wrong, but it should not have allowed a technicality to destroy what I will call the substantive issues of the matter. And therefore, personally, I would like what has happened to happen, for it to go to the next court at least. So from my standpoint, it's good. I believe that the substantive matter should take precedence over these solving issues and all. After all, we're talking about ruling a country and all of that. And to hear that because somebody wasn't served, but then I'm not saying that is legally that the High Court was incorrect. I'm saying that there is a quarrel in legal circles about the precedent that should indeed be given to technicality and substantive issues. So I am pleased that the matter has gone forward because I see the issue is of massive importance to how we view what the legitimacy and all of that and how the system will develop. Because this is the issues about people involved in electoral fraud, people that are here and abroad and voting, literature that is supposed to be elsewhere are different in the boxes, some 43 boxes and that sort of thing. We will never deal with the issue of legitimacy in this country until we deal with that matter. And legitimacy and the nature of the manipulation of elections that I believe has to be solved if we are going to go forward. I am not here accusing anybody of anything, but what I am saying is that we have had a situation here where there's claim by even the chairman of the election commission did say these are important issues that should be dealt with at a at the election petition, and now the petition is thrown out, and these for technical reasons, and these important issues having to do with people who should not be participating in election doing so has come to naught. So I'm glad it has happened, and I hope that the result would be as I've stated.
Yeah. And from my standpoint, I want to say the CCJ did not have jurisdiction with a literal reading of our constitution and the CCJ's own charter. And the CCJ took jurisdiction to hear the matter during the 5 months. And it said, look, this is election and it's an important matter. And we are the court of last resort. And I think it opened the precedence there. And I think this appeal court could not say that it didn't have jurisdiction to hear such a matter. I think, and I agree with you, Dr. Jeffrey, this is a very important matter about an election that, for all intents and purposes, has not been concluded as far as everything that happened is concerned. We'll get the lawyers in probably tomorrow to delve into the legal implications here. Let's press forward and talk about Aubrey Norton's election. As I said in the introduction, Norton won by 82% of the votes. He got a majority of his people on the executive. Henry Jeffrey, were you surprised that, I know you wrote 2 very important columns I republished on my website this weekend. One was wishing Aubrey Norton well. Another one was Comet the Hour, Comet the Man. And it's been read on social media a lot because I think it put the election of Aubrey Norton in larger perspective. Were you surprised? Are you surprised, first of all, at the extent to which he has won? And secondly, that the other 2 have not done so well.
Well, thank you, David. Let me say that I believe that Aubrey Norton represents a lot of what the membership of the PNC and a lot of Afro-Guyanese feel at this moment. You only got to walk the streets, and you would have known that they believe that Mr. Harman have been not forceful enough and not taking on the PPP enough, and that the PPP need to be taken on. Aubrey Norton has been doing this all his life, and that's why I said that, that will be one of the things that should happen, that will happen for the most part. So I wasn't really surprised that he won. The margin, yes, surprised me, but we must also look at the numbers, and you will see that although Aubrey has come close to the kind of numbers that other leaders have had, I mean, I think he almost got something like, 48% of those who voted. No, 48% of the constituents, which was about 2,500, I'm told. He did only get about 33%. I'll say about 38.7% of that, of the constituency as a whole. So you have nearly 60% of people that did not vote for Mr. Norton. You have to be, that didn't participate. I am not making much claim here because I don't know how delegates are chosen. I don't know all of that. But if you had that sort of numbers, 250, 2,500 people, and you only got 900 and what was it, 967.
67.
You were 60% of the people did not vote for him. Now, you're talking about perspective. Going forward, he has to look at that carefully. That's something he has to look at carefully. The euphoria about winning is great. I mean, he wiped out the opposition. But if he wished to stay in that position, because in 2 years, you perhaps at another biennial Congress, you can have another challenge. And if he wished to stay in that position, he has to realize that he has something like 60% of those people that they did not vote for him, and will have to take that into consideration as he go forward. So yes, I expected him to win. Maybe not with such a large, absolutely wiping out the opposition, but that says something about the opposition and the sort of actions they will have to take too. But certainly, he has a lot to think about also, particularly if you consider that these delegates truly represent the majority of members in the PNCR.
Yes, and thank you for that observation, Henry. The observation of the relatively low turnout at election, and I don't know the inner workings of party elections to understand why there was such a low turnout, and it's something that nobody has mentioned up until now. And so I'm glad that you mentioned it, and I want to concur what you said. I mean, Lord, nowhere I have gone, and it's in Portsmouth, in Buxton, I went in TV for a little while 2 days ago, and wherever I go, the ordinary person on the street, even children, are talking about this election. It was as if it were, for African Guyanese in particular, as it were a national election. And I think that's a very important factor. But let me go to Adam Harris, who is now joined us. Adam, you were on. You didn't indicate when you were on which horse you were quote unquote riding. Were you surprised, first of all, that Norton won? And he won by such a large margin.
No, I'm not surprised because I looked at the various campaigns. And you got to remember that Aubrey Norton has been doing this almost all his life, from the days of YSM. He hit the ground. He visited almost all the locations you can think about. When you look at some of the forums he addressed, and you look at the message that he was carrying, people naturally gravitated to him because they believe that the party has been too docile. The party has not been as active as they would have liked. And Norton was saying all the right things. At the press conference he had yesterday, I said to him that sections of the PPP are saying that with Aubrey Norton there, one can expect riotous behavior. And he gave an interesting answer. He said, let them point to one example that he sparked riotous behavior. Yes, he's aggressive. Yes, he knows what should be done, but he also knows that there are certain parameters in which he can operate. Now, Aubrey, I heard Dr. Jeffrey talking about the number of votes when you compare it to the actual number of the constituents. One of the things that started this relatively low turnout was the fact that it was supposed to be virtual. A lot of people did not actually use the virtual forum Yes, there were some polling stations in all the regions, but we don't know where these stations were located. So there could have been members out there who couldn't get to vote. The other thing had to do with the registration. How many people out there are active members in that their membership has been paid up and all of that? So we take that into consideration. And I would say that there was a sizable turnout compared to what would happen. In some places, you only had 70 votes, some places 60 votes, but where you had relatively large constituents, Norton literally wiped out the opposition. And that was clear from how the results came in. You were showing the regions and what you want, except for Region 7, where Mr. Harmon was very strong. And there he got what, 70 votes or something like that, and Norton got 14. Norton just got to everybody in all the regions you can talk about, and that was a lot of work. And I saw him running along, and so I wasn't surprised at the result.
You weren't surprised at the result. And you made an interesting observation there, Adam. You would know, you were a party man for a long time in terms of the inner workings of the party, that we know at election time, members come out of the woodwork and so on. So you might have had people on the list who really were not active members and so on and so forth. So that could be part of the answer that Jeffrey was raising just now about the turnout. Let's go to Christopher Ram. Chris, unlike the other two panelists here, I don't think you have had much institutional relationship with the PNC. So you might be the outsider along with me here on this panel. Are you surprised that Norton won? Same question. Are you surprised that Norton won? Are you surprised at the margin by which he has won? And thirdly, why do you think the election captured the imagination, certainly of those on the side, the base of the PNC?
Well, let me take you up on that first point you made, David, about not having any relationship with the PNC.
Institutional, I said.
Institutional, yes. But in fact, I think as a matter of public knowledge, I was once approached by Vola Lawrence to ask her whether I would be prepared to get into the leadership contest as a representative or as a nominee. I think it's of the constituency in Ryeville. I declined because it was never, not that I had anything against the PNC as such, but I just didn't think I wanted to pursue that kind of political role. I just say that just for the record.
Yes.
And the other thing I want to say is every one of us must be pleasantly surprised that the PNC has had elections in which there was, as Henry said, the turnout was not as big as we might have wished, but there has been no accusation of fraud or tampering or anything of that nature. And very importantly, the mechanism by which the party chooses its executive. I think those things are commendable. That Aubrey Norton would have done so well is as much to do with his own performance in terms of the elections as with the quality of the competition he had to deal with. Now, Harmon was sometimes seen as the de facto president under David Granger. He was the campaign manager. He lost the elections. He was aloof. He was arrogant. He really was. He antagonized not only his own others but his own supporters. Now, I don't think anybody thought Dr. Richard Van West Charles was a serious contender for the leadership of the PNC. What was he in a position to offer at this stage? So the quality of the leadership, in my view, the quality of the competition, probably did not bring out the best in Aubrey Norton. Maybe there's more he should have done and could have done. But he is the unchallenged leader of the party. It's the PNC has been an institution, it's been part of the government and part of the governance of this country. What happens in the PNC, the quality of its elections, the quality of its leadership, the quality of its policies concern each and every one of us. And we now have to say, Norton, who is not so much identified, and that's my concern, with progressive politics, and all the points I've heard so far is about elections and politics and power and power. We will talk about the other things, but as leader of the opposition or leader of the main opposition party, let me be careful, as the alternative government, surely there are serious other issues to be discussed, and I would like to hear Aubrey Norton and his team. I mean, we're not talking about the oil contract. We're not talking
All right,
about
Chris, we're gonna
finance.
get to that. We're
Yes,
gonna get to that,
so I'm
Chris.
saying I'm hoping
Yeah.
Aubrey Norton is not a one-issue politician.
And we'll get to that. I will get to that. But since you raised it, I would like to put to you the observation made by both Adam and Henry, in that Aubrey has captured the contemporary mood of his constituency. And while you may be talking, while you and I and others may think that issues matter, for that constituency that I know very well, what matters at this moment is a leader that stands up for them, as they put it. And I hope you're not trifling that.
No. That indeed is very important. It's one of the political things. I mean, when I look at my notes, he is inheriting a broken party. To fix that without state power behind you and state resources behind you is not going to be easy, David.
Yes, but he's also responding to a constituency that feels beaten down, beaten up, trampled on for a year and a quarter. And I can tell you, Chris, that should not be trifled with, that the fact that he responds to that should not make him look like a one-issue leader. One has to win the leadership in order then to get on with the issues that we're talking about. Right.
That goes without saying, Mr. Moderator. Right. But I am giving you my views.
Yes, no. And I'm just trying to get to you that as important as the issues were, he was not running for president of the country. He was running for leader of a party.
But he surely has to take on these issues. I mean, the border is. David, let me finish, please. No, David, you have to let me finish. David, you have to let me finish, please.
Yeah.
Surely the border issue is as critical as anything in this country. If you don't want to say the oil contract is the border issue is.
Yes, but those were not on the agenda for the party's election. Those are national issues.
Because the battery is low.
Right. Yes, those are national issues that he said he will deal with. But what he was running for was not president of Guyana, but leader of the People's National Congress. But to come back to the issues that he should.
How come the batteries?
Check it back. He should address. Jeffrey, Dr. Jeffrey, let me bring you in here. One of the issues that is uppermost as Norton comes out of this campaign is unity within the party. How do you think Norton should move as far as bringing together what Mr. Danger said are the factions and factionalism in the party?
Yeah. I, let me first say that Aubrey did mention issues, national issues. They just didn't don't happen to be the issues that Chris is concerned about. He did mention that he's interested in the National
Natural
Resources
Resource Fund.
Fund. He's interested in GCOM. Those are major political issues of the day. Border dispute, there has never been an argument between the PPP and the PNC not wanting to work together on border issue. Border issue is not a controversial matter between these two parties. They have taken almost a single stance on this. Norton might have been wasting his time to start talking about border issue because there's no quarrel around border issues. He's into an election and he has got to focus on what is important. The APNU and AFC believe that the election was manipulated. They believe it was manipulated in a given way. They believe that since then, essentially the government have been running roughshod over the country, and the PNC under Mr. Hammond was not responding in a given way, and therefore they are looking for someone or some sort of arrangement that will deal with this matter. The things, the issues such as the National Resources Fund, and also is great. He's going to look at that, but he has to deal with what is the concern, major concern of his constituency. I see nothing wrong with the trajectory of his discourse. And I agree with Chris that he needs to have both things in mind. I'm not saying that. But when you are in an election, you have to craft your thing essentially to deal with what is the fundamental issues that are affecting your people. So the question you asked, I missed it. What was that?
About the unity of the party, bringing the
Oh,
factions together. Yeah, how should he
yeah.
move on that?
My view is that the PNC got to start. Here is where I will go a bit national. The PNC has to start looking at Guyana for what it is. It got to start seeing itself, essentially, call itself multi-ethnic, but essentially its base is essentially Afro people that African ethnicity are carrying that base. The same goes for the PPP. When they have to have a sort of committee and sit down clearly to define what this party is. They got to get fundamental here. To say that you have to recognize the interests of your base is not to say that then you're a single ethnic party, so to speak. But those that are with you must understand that those people are your base and they must not be trampled upon. Not simply because they are Guyanese, but they're not trampled upon from their perspective, at least because they're Guyanese. They're trampled upon because they believe they're Africans. And you have to respond to that. The PNC will have to sit down and make that quite clear to every single person that it has such an interest. I think the PVP maybe got greater leeway to talk about we Guyanese because they're in office and that sort of thing. They are saying we Guyanese, while most people will say they are doing a lot more for their constituents. The PNC don't have that. So Aubrey and his people got to sit down and first take off that view that you are this universal people in Guyana. There's no universal people in Guyana. Essentially, we don't have a united public opinion, and everybody knows that. If the PBNC say they believe in something, and the PB say they do not, the Indian people going to start believing with the PB. Oh, one of their own lawyers said so the other day. He said you can't get a fair trial in the courts because that is how it is. And you have to take that into consideration, both if you are going to confront. So firstly, you got to sit down with your think tank and reformulate the view. This is not Burnham time. This is not Hoyt's time. This is a time when the reality is quite there. When Burnham came to office in 1964, he promised that by now we will be a one people. He said it. He said he will show that the PPP has misled the Indian people into believe that we are racist and that gradually become one people. Is today or yesterday? I seen a letter from Mr. Roy Clement, my friend, who's saying, oh, the religious division has gone. I never knew it was such a large thing in my first place. But the religious division has gone. And oh, in time, the ethnic one would go. You can't run a country like that. You got to deal with issues that they are now and not hope that in time they will go away. So they have to sit down, clear their head, and then organize to allow ordinary people out there to see that on all sides, because from the organizational side, they're not a single party, that their interests are being taken care of, partly by having the people in the right structures, but also by their going to the people themselves, going down to the people, Indian people, whatsoever people, and doing that. If I was Mr. Norton, I'd use this Christmas season to just decide to go and see people. Call my think tank or whatsoever you have together. Go and see people. People of all things. People are a little bit more open now, Miss Christmas and all that, and start to talk to them. But not, the unity of the party is of fantastic importance. But that unity will only be solidified if he shows himself being able to stand up to the PPP. That's what he promised. That is what he got to deliver on. He can walk the country as much as he like, but if he doesn't deliver on this major promise that he has made, well, as I said before, you have 2 years, no, and he can be challenged. And I don't believe the others are dead or will walk. We'll have to see. But others can also come up, emerge. So that is what I think about unity. It's a fundamental relook at what Guyana is, not this thing, nampi-pampi thing. You got to say, what are we? What is this? What kind of country? It takes, you really have to sit down and do that.
Adam Harris? Is Adam with us? Yes. Adam, how about holding the party together, the unity of the party? We know there was some acrimony, some fallout from the Granger leadership tenure. How should Aubrey move in terms of the unity of the party?
You know, I think the unity is going to be crucial, as Dr. Jeffrey said. But I listened to Aubrey. Already he has reached out to Richard Van West to be an advisor. So Richard is going to be there. I saw a congratulatory letter or message from Mr. Granger. I saw a reaction from the United States Embassy. This afternoon, I saw a reaction from the Private Sector Commission. So these are all things that are happening. These are all things that, and Aubrey was no idiot. He was a Foreign Service officer. Aubrey is going to take a look at all these things and mold them into his program. He was talking about a general secretary, and I was tempted to ask him if he proposed to ask Joe Harmon to be the party general secretary. I didn't ask him, and he hasn't said anything. Dr. Jeffrey also made the point about the ethnic unity in the party. Of interest is the fact that people of other ethnicities have been in the party, and some of them have acceded to leadership role. You have Mursalim, the treasurer. You look at the Central Exec Committee. Um, there are a lot of them out there. These are all people who are prepared to recognize that the party is not uniethnic, if there is such a word. These are people who are prepared to go out there and say, look, these are issues. And Dr. Jeffrey made the point, it's not a national election campaign. The burning issues now involve the voters list. It involves the appointment of Vishnu Prasad as chairman of GCOM, as chief elections officer of GCOM. It involves the money being spent, and it appears to be only to people of Indian descent. The bulk of the sugar workers are Indian, and they get the kind of money that the bauxite workers would have dreamed of. $250,000 one-off grant. They also get the 70% increase which the public servants got. I don't know if theirs is taxable. They got flood relief and the COVID grant. And we've all heard of people from Black communities saying they pass us straight. When the community is mixed, we had a lot of Blacks came out and said they passed my house without coming in. So things like that are more pressing for Aubrey and his team than many of the other things. The national issues, he has time. He knows what is going to come. He has to deal with the issues for which his party supporters and members have been complaining about, issues that have not been addressed in any forum.
The voice there of Adam Harris. Christopher, let me bring you in here. Is Chris with us? It doesn't look as though Chris with us. Let me press you. You said you wanted to ask.
I am, David. Look,
right.
I'm on your screen.
All right. I'm okay. Here you are. Okay, Chris, since you're here, let me throw the question to you about unity of the party. We know that Mr. Harman was perceived as Mr. Granger's choice. There was a lot of pushback against Mr. Granger, and so there have been factions in the party. How do you think Aubrey Norton should approach dealing with the various factions?
Well, I think he's already shown that he's prepared to reach out. Yeah, we hear he's appointed advisors, and those things are useful. But what I believe is going to be a critical issue at this stage is whether Joseph Harman would have the grace to see that, look, the party has in fact rejected him. I've heard a suggestion that he be made general secretary. Harman has not shown any kind of capacity and competence in that area. That requires a lot of nuts and bolts kind of skill. I'm not sure he's cut out for that. I believe that Harman should step down as leader of the opposition. Aubrey Norton was on the list of the APNU AFC that went into the elections. He's not a member of parliament. That's a very critical forum for national discussions. I really would like to see, through whatever mechanism, that he would get into Parliament and get into debating and not allow the Speaker of the National Assembly to stop behave like if he is the king, like if he has been elected, and maybe he's more powerful than the president. And that's the kind of thing I I believe that those are very critical. But Harman staying as leader of the opposition, in my view, is not going to help the Aubrey Norton. It's not going to help the party, and I don't think it's helpful to the country.
Chris, I'm glad you raised that, and then let me get your co-panelists in on that. Dr. Jeffrey, do you think that Harman should offer his resignation, resignation as leader of the opposition to the leader, and that Aubrey gets into Parliament and become the leader of the opposition? What's your thoughts on that? And then to you.
I believe that the party should sit down and think about what is its priorities. And if you say going to Parliament and wasting time waffling in there, because Parliament don't bother with it. I mean, it's a majoritarian arrangement. You can go in there, make a lot of noise, and it means absolute little or nothing. So effectively, you can, and with the media today, you can make the noise outside if he's the leader of the party. Does Aubrey Norton want more time to go around building the party? It doesn't matter if Harman stays there. From where I'm standpoint, he has the right, of course, to go if he wants, and he may or may not. But it's what is going to put priority. Does he need time to be spending among his constituents and walking the country, not paying mind to what is essentially a talk shop, and really getting work done, going to Parliament? I mean, well, you debate this, you debate what you like. They're arguing now. You hear it's being said that, oh, look, the speaker, the other side can get up and say anything, and it's over. So the debates can take place if he wants to get involved in them, not necessarily in Parliament. Aubrey, no, I wrote the issue about participation. And they need, and Chris raised the one about broken party. What I'm saying to you, it's whether Aubrey Norton has the time, whether or not his agenda determines that, or he thinks it determines that. And they should sit down, as he had already said. I would sit down collectively and we will make that decision. Harman would be there, and they would all make the decision collectively of what should happen. So I think that would be determined about what the leader intends to do in the next couple of months. I said, you still got 2002, and this leadership, if he wishes to stay there, I think he should spend some time thinking this issue quite clear, because Parliament can take a lot of your time. A whole lot of your time. You gotta be there Thursday, and this and that, and therefore you must know what it is that he wants.
Adam Harris, do you think Aubrey should go into Parliament? Should he remove Joe as opposition leader in Parliament? Your thoughts?
I don't think so. If he goes to Parliament, he would have a high profile, and he will get media coverage. What's Dr. Jeffrey said? That's more or less hot air. He can have some of the best points, but because of the government majority, those points could be swept aside, voted aside, and a decision is taken. I think Joe Harman built up a relationship with the current crop of parliamentarians, and he should therefore be allowed to say they have worked a lot together. They have a program, they have an agenda. I have seen some of the women coming forward, Dr. Karen Cummings, Annette Ferguson, this girl who was with your party,
Sarbo,
yes, Amanza Desir. I've seen all of them step up big time in the face of challenges and what have you. They responded to Joe. This girl, Geeta Chandan, for example, I have seen all of them under Joe's leadership as the opposition leader react and react very, very well, even during the budget debate. So I don't think you should move Joe. I don't. If Joe wants to move, it's up to him. But I think that it's a case of recognizing the resources we have, first of all, in the party, and to use these resources as best we could. Do we want to put people aside and switch and change and all of this time? I'm not so sure that that would be in the best interest of the party.
You mentioned that you wanted to ask him whether he would make Joe Harmon the general secretary. Do you think that Joe would be a good general secretary?
Well, Joe is a people's person. Joe is familiar with organizing events for the party. He has done this. He has built a lot of Congress places around the country and all of that. He's familiar with that. I think he could make a good general secretary because, for one, Joe is no slouch when it comes to dealing with people issues. And in the party, as I asked Mr. Norton whether Congress Place would once more be a hive of activities, whether he gonna be operating from Congress Place, whether Congress Place gonna be home to so many more activities, both at the political and social level. If Joe Harmon is general secretary, I don't know how it would clash with being leader of the opposition. I really don't know. I think he could manage both. Um, I think he would make a very good general secretary. That's my view.
Yeah. And if I may say, my own view on whether Norton should go into Parliament and Joe Harmon should step down. I think a lot of that would have to be determined by the parliamentary agenda. What are you using the parliament for? If, as Henry says, you're using the parliament to just go in there and debate, then you may not want Aubrey to be putting his energies there. If you're going to use the parliament in more robust ways, then perhaps that may determine whether Aubrey goes there or not. But I think they will have to determine first and foremost what are they using the parliament for. And that would determine whether Aubrey should go or should not go into parliament. That's my take. Let me come back to you, Jeffrey. And let's talk here now about what Aubrey has laid out. He says voters list, the removal of the chair, the removal of the chief elections officer. And so he's saying a new voters list. The parliamentary thing is his first stop. Elaborate, because you have said that you think that should indeed be uppermost on this list. Elaborate for us.
Well, yes, obviously, during the 2020, long before the 2020 elections, I was questioning the nature of the list. I was saying that you can't have 600 and something thousand people in a country on the list. And then everybody else came out and says, even the European Union in their report says that about the election. And there needs to be a new list. Not no continuous registration and all of that sort of thing. You need a brand new list. And I would say, after what all this voting abroad and all this, you should have a new, from people abroad and all this, you need to have a list based on the best technology, biometrics. So, you can't just take one person and send them to vote for another person 3-4 times. And therefore, they should try to find a new brandness. Indeed, the CARICOM people, the CARICOM report said that that's a minimum for going to a next election. They use the term minimum, I believe, to go to another election. So I think that is fundamentally important to the process as we go forward. Secondly, yes, GCOM, but the whole question about what GCOM could do. I could never believe that you can have an election commission who's going to say that, hey, yeah, it looks, this thing is very important, like people vote twice in this thing. Go out there, ask the relevant authorities, and then say, well, we don't have the capacity to do it. What I mean? You got to make a managerial decision. And if people, you have to have the capacity, you have to make a managerial decision. You are there to run a free and fair election. If you ask the authorities at the time and they say, yes, this thing is happening, you can't just say, let's give the election to somebody else that have no interest in its happening. And then you can go to petition. Well, we see where that got us. We got to determine clearly, and most places in this world, in democratic world, allow the electoral body to do just that, determining. And if people have a core, I am not saying determine for anybody here, but to come to make you have to come to a decision, and then that's your thing. Take it, that's our decision. Whosoever wins, and then go forward. Let the other people who think you are wrong go to the election commission. I think that you got to watch it. Somebody got to clarify what if GCOM has or does not have this this kind of a relationship. And then as to I spoke to our view of Guyanese society. You see, we are talking about GCOM being neutral. Remember, GCOM is neutral. The other day, Mr. Alexander wrote an article saying it's a decrepit, corrupt, and all that article. All that is based upon this conception that in neutral, it was never neutral. It was never neutral. You got two large parties basing two ethnic groups, and they had equal power there, and the chairman was there as a tiebreaker. Now, and people come and say, oh, look, the people said, we can read reports where they are saying that we should have a neutral thing, yes, after the Carter people or in Europe. But if they always say that, go to Kenya, you must have neutral, but you must have enough sense to know that your country is not an homogeneous country for you to got nothing neutral. You are, and that's what the formula doesn't give anybody neutral. They give two parties that have two ethnic groups equal power as it should be, because election matter must be determined by substantially all of us. That is what they did. Now, I don't know what he is possible to do unless you change your thinking about this matter. In Belgium or somewhere, if this was happening, they will say, and I think they'll do it with the ministries, they will say, hey, what's going to happen here? Anytime PNC, even if you don't want to say race, PNC has the CEO, we will have the deputy CEO. Story done. You ain't got quarrel over. There would be no big quarrel. And this deputy and the thing must meet to do certain things, and they must have some sort of consensus on what to go forward. The quarrel finish. But you want to deal in a bicommunal society where you are giving all the power to one person and the other person feel upset. This is happening because we live in dreams. This is not a country in which you can have neutrality. The Carter formula is not based on neutrality. You can't keep, as I said in my article last week, please, you want a neutral, Mr. Alexander and company, the PNC side, say, let's put up a committee. Let me find a new. The GCOM who was supposed to be neutral and neutral. Now they are going to tell you find a neutral committee to determine who should be who can be on this committee. What criteria they're going to use? Who's going to accept the criteria? The decrepit government. I mean, these things you got to realize the country you live in. So the chairman runs on an important issue, the chairman becomes the commission. There is no commission because they break out. No, we don't agree with each other. The chairman becomes the commission. You have to sit down, look at where your country is, have some sort of principles. Effectively, all election matters should be decided on by substantially all of us, and therefore organize things around that, and recognize yourself for what you are. You're major. You are the representative of the major Indian group, and PNC is the representative major African group. Once you see that, and these two groups are politically always at loggerhead, so you got to accept that. Don't think you're a homogeneous society going to pick up what they in England and bring it here and tell me about neutral committee.
Mr. Christopher, rule of law, democracy, fair play, ethnically divided society. You heard your brother Henry Jeffrey there on the whole issue of GCOM and the voters list and so on. Aubrey said that that's his priority. Where do you come down on it?
Well, I think if we can go on and on, all kind of generalizations, David. What specifically are we saying about Article 161, for example? What are we saying about Parliament? Henry is saying that he served in that body that was a waste of time. I don't know why he wasted his time. But what I am not in favor of the mechanism, and Henry and we all know that Carter Price model was supposed to be for the 1992 elections only. You recall that it was a temporary arrangement. But then when we had the Constitutional Reform Commission, that found its way into the Constitution. So the question is this, as I said, we can go on and on. The question is, what are the changes we would make? And I would put the same question to my friend Vincent Alexander. What is he suggesting? Because Vincent is saying, look, you can't remove me. I'm there for life. All the commissioners, in fact, are there for life, given the constitutional arrangement. What do we want to see of a GCOM, and how do we plan to get there? Those would be my question. Mine is more a question than a comment, because I'm saying that is what the Constitution says. Are you going to go outside of the Constitution and have extra constitutional arrangements? I think that would be a very dangerous road on which to embark.
And what about changing the Constitution to reflect the political and ethnic biases in the country?
Well, I think what you have to do, I don't take this view, David, that Guyana does not have people who are capable of doing, operating professionally. If that is what we're saying, then all we have are two enclaves. We don't have a nation, and I don't know where the third set will go. Lots of countries with polarization, and whether you have different races or ethnicities, every society has its division, particularly when it comes to elections. Even India, where Modi seems to be reigning supreme, you have a lot of election. You have a lot of issues in that country. Of course, that's a federal system. We are a single system. So you will always have biases. How do we make sure that our election system is fixed to avoid the kinds of accusations that come almost every single election. We're having an election petition. Do we need to have some kind of benchmark for an election petition? Do you say, okay, if it's a margin of 0.5%, you must have a recount, an automatic recount, rather than to have some presiding officer saying, no, I'm not granting it, or hides, and before you look for him, you can't find him by midday the next day, and therefore you can't have the recount. I don't think, and look, we have had lots of elections following 1992 that had very few complaints. We had the one, the Esther Pereira case, which is the ID, and that was decided on a technicality, the question of whether an ID, someone should be shut out from voting because they did not have an ID form, ID badge, and that was correctly decided. We resolved that issue. Let's decide. But I don't want, on this program, I came here to talk about putting the Aubrey Norton victory in perspective. I did not come here to litigate on the elections. All I can say is that I'm glad, I welcome the decision of the Guyana Court of Appeal, that they have jurisdiction. Therefore, let the matter go forward. Let them decide it on legal principles, and let this be tested. If it has to go to the CCJ, so be it. That's what rule of law is all about. It is to give recognition to the supremacy of the law. Who interprets the laws is the courts. And our highest court, our apex court, is the Caribbean Court of Justice. So my thing is really to putting the Aubrey Norton victory in perspective and not to litigate.
Let me ask you this. You say all societies have differences.
Yes.
And you're correct on that. But would you say that Guyana is one of those societies in which the differences militate against good governance, militate against democracy, and so therefore should not be treated as a quote unquote normal society?
Well, let me ask you that, let me raise this issue. We always get this situation. A political party in opposition is always the one saying, oh, we should change the constitution, we should do this, we should do that. When they get into power, that takes second place. So is the problem then the question of the political parties, the election system, one that says you must have this party list, one that says if you don't compete on this big fancy party list, you can't take part in elections? Is that part of our problem? Is it part of our problem? We don't have things like campaign finance that we don't control. You have the ruling party, and whether it was the PPP or the PNC, APNU plus AFC, utilizing state resources for purposes of strengthening their own image and support. So that itself leads to an unfairness in the system. Elections must not only be free, they must be fair. But I come back to this. And maybe Aubrey Norton, who has spent some time at the University of Guyana, he should think this through. He's had enough time. He's been campaigning. It's not like if he won yesterday and he now starts to think. He should have positions on these matters, and I would love to hear him on all of these matters. Yes, his constituency is suffering badly. I haven't heard him criticize the leadership of the GPSU, which has done such a poor job at representing the public workers of this country. More people have spoken outside of the party than inside the party about this business of the imposition of a wage increase. We have to address all our problems, and whether it is the PPP that creates problems, and of course it does, or the weaknesses in the Granger Harmon leadership of the opposition, and whilst they were in government, that they did not do enough work to assist their base. And David, you know my position on village politics and village economy. You know my position on the minimum wage. Those are things that are equally important. It's not like if his Aubrey Norton's people don't have anything else to do than address just the but these are bread and butter issues. And those are political issues as well, but they're also economic issues.
Dr. Jeffrey, let me get you back in. Good night, Henry Rodney. Glad to see you around. Good night, Mr. Kurt Paris. And we try to operate with some democracy around there, my brothers. So bear with us. Henry Jeffrey, countryman of Henry Jeffrey and Adam Harris. Better for welcome people, Baron people. Henry, a lot has been made of the conduct of the elections in the PNC. And a lot of people are saying, why can't we not replicate this at the national level? Elaborate on that.
Well, that tells you, David, that tells you the national problem. It's essentially one ethnic group messing around with each other. And therefore, you will never get that sort of thing. I wrote on what happened in BV when it was quite clear that the PNC government was in power. The two people in the African community got their own local government party, almost fighting each other against the PNC and one for the PNC and all of that. That is the problem, and it's not, as Chris says, all society got divisions. Of course, all society had divisions. But the question is, when you become bicommunal and the two factions control 80% of the voting population, that's why, and they have the power and authority, that's when you only got about 6 countries like us in the world. And the result is all of them ending up in trouble because you're failing to realize that it's not a small difference. This is a huge difference. It's not when you, and he says this, but there's ghetto. They don't get over. What happened in India? He brought up India. What happened in India in 47 or whatsoever? Jana said when they went to him, and the British said to him, look, we have the Jana said to them, don't show me anything that the Hindus will control the Muslims. The Hindus will not control me. And yet they have power to cause disruption, and India broke. I don't know why that arose, but that is a fact. Look at Cyprus, almost a country like ours. What happened? They're calling it Cyprus, but you have Greek and Turkish separate running their own thing together. Look at Northern Ireland. Deal with the reality, now with no conceptual thing about democracy. You have to deal with the reality. Look at Belgium. Belgium don't even have a national party of any consequence. It's different. And then we talk about 5 months here of how long. Belgium got a record. It took 2 years for them to come to a decision yet. You know, when people to say these things, you sit back and you say, this is real.
Yeah. But
you know, and yet,
in Kenya and Zimbabwe, it went past 5 months.
And yet it is one of the better countries to live in around the place. And they got to look at Switzerland. Switzerland don't have no president. It got presidency, and you got the 5 ministers who apparently run Switzerland. They rotate as president. We are, I think, half of it is that we are so locked up in the little British Constitution. I don't, we get locked up in British constitutionalism and believe a democracy gotta be majoritarian all of the time. And let me point out to Chris. I fell out with the AFC when they were in office for keep telling them David knows that what they're doing there is nonsense. that they promised in the manifesto that they're going to bring shared governance and bring the PPP into this government. Oh my, 5 years I said that. So this is not a thing coming up, not from me, about the PPP, about the PPP. No, this is not a no thing. 5 years I spent doing that, saying it. Oh no, now they're rude. They should have done it. They're the protected country. Indeed, I wrote an article said they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Because you can see that if this change, what's going to happen? And so said, so done. So I am not here talking about it was them when the PPP was there and the PNC was there. It's the structure of the society that's like that. It's the system that's wrong. It got to be changed for Black people, got to be changed for Indian people, got to be changed for everybody. We have to sit down and see what we are. Now what the British tell us we are, and crap about neutrality in a situation that does not afford it.
Mr. Harris? Same question to you. The PPP, the PNC has conducted what everyone has said is an above-board election. All the contestants accepted the process. They accepted the results. Apparently there were hiccups, but not enough for them to challenge. So it was a smooth election. It was a model election. Why can't we do this at the national level? Henry has given his view. What are your thoughts?
My view is, partially Henry's. Let me tell you, first of all, it was a more or less homogeneous group that contested the election. So you ain't got a quarrel there. And the result was gonna go one way. You had no ethnic challenge. It's a funny thing. You showed, as they say, you show a bull a red flag and something happened. So, it was a standard election. It was a common purpose, except for the people who were contesting. So you had no problem. The outcome will not have an impact on people's lives. A national election would. You get vexed with Aubrey Norton, election time, you have vote for the PNC and all of that. You stay home. You're not going to hurt. Well, at least not to the extent at the national level where, you can really, really get hurt as people are doing now. So at the national level, it would be nice to have that election like that. But it ain't going to happen because, first of all, different people got different objectives, and the contestants have been groomed to accept that a certain kind of people will support me. And some of those people who might be angry with them if they ain't have vote, you send in 2 boys to threaten them. Look, we can burn down your house, you better go out and vote for me and all the kind of thing. That's not going to happen at the party level. It's not going to happen at the party level. So you're not going to get that at the national level.
Christopher Ram? Are you apparently we have Chris, this question of a colorblind constitutional system in a society that is far from colorblind. How does that work? Tell us.
Well, I don't know. I don't know the meaning of your question. I can't answer a question that I can't understand.
Well, I'm saying that you seem to be saying that we can have a political process, a constitutional process that is colorblind.
I did not use such words, sir. No. Please don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say that. I said we could run an efficient elections. That's what I said.
And efficient elections within the context of.
But can we get back? David, you invited me to speak, putting the Aubrey Norton victory in perspective.
Yes.
And you've gone all over the place.
Yes, but you said Aubrey Norton should be all over the place.
No,
You're the
did.
one that said
I
that.
said there are national.
You said he should go to border. He should do this, and now you say.
But shouldn't he do that as shouldn't he do that as leader of the opposition?
Yes, well, I'm asking you here.
Look, David, come on. I don't have to tolerate this. I don't put words in my mouth.
All right, well, take the words out of that I'm putting out your mouth and say I'm asking.
But I've already said. I said my position.
Yeah,
I said the Guyanese are capable.
Other panelists.
I said Guyanese are capable of holding free and fair elections, as they have done in the past.
Right. And how do we get to free and fair elections within the context of our ethnic divisions?
Have we never had free and fair elections in Guyana? Is that what you're saying?
We have never had free and fair elections.
Okay, well then I just fundamentally disagree with you. That's all right.
Yes.
Let me agree that I don't agree with you.
Tell me where we have had one free and fair election. One election that both sides agreed on, except the 2006 election where the PNC didn't challenge. All elections from 1964 have been challenged by the loser.
Well,
I challenge you to say that that's not true.
You know elections between 1968 and 1985. You have a good knowledge of that. You fought for that.
Right.
You know that.
Right.
So we're talking from 92 onwards. I mentioned 97 elections.
Challenged.
Yes, it was challenged, and I mentioned the reason on which it was challenged.
Right. 2001. Challenged. Challenged.
Yeah, but a challenge does not mean there has been no successful challenge to an election in this country in the post-proportional representation era.
You're talking about legal.
Let me finish, please. Let me finish. I am old enough to know about the Houston by-election, for example. I know we've had successful challenges under the old constituency system. In 2006, and Henry there was this issue of the seat in Region 10.
Right.
There was that issue. And that, I think we all accept, it was wrong. We've seen when Boodoo tried to manipulate the votes in 2015.
2011.
2011, yes, 2011. And Vincent Alexander challenged him. That was before the process. Now, that again was such a crude thing by Boodoo. But overall, I think in the post proportional representation system, we have not had a successful challenge, barring Esther Pereira.
You're talking about legal challenge. I'm talking about political challenge. I mean, 97, they were on the streets. 68 to 85, a lot of us said they were rigged. That wasn't those challenges. I mean, I'm not talking here about legal challenge in the courts. I'm talking about whether the other side accepted the results and said, let's move on. And I'm saying, except for 2006, they have not.
Well, in 2011, we had the government served, and I will stick with the law. Pardon me. I accept that there's a reality outside of law. Right. Not everything, but and where I feel we have fallen down, David, where I do feel we have fallen down, election petitions, for example, should be heard from day to day. We have allowed election petitions to drag on and on. The 2015 the petition against the 2015 elections has still not been heard. Now, that kind of thing, whether it is the PPP that brings the challenge, whether it is the PNC, APNU plus AFC that brings the challenge, I believe it is important that election challenges are heard promptly. And so that, because you don't want your government to be exposed internationally, to have its own credibility at stake domestically. Foreigners are going to exploit it, especially given our border dispute. So I would like to, I think, and that is just sticking to the law, that you need to hear election petitions promptly. The Court of Appeal will see what the decision says, and we hope that they will move to listening the substance of the case now. This was a procedural point. Jurisdiction, every lawyers love to raise jurisdictions. Now that we have this, let us go forward. Let us test this. Let us see all the boxes, all these false votes, or allegations of false votes. Let these things come out in the open, and hopefully we can come to some kind of consensus. Our country cannot move forward. Our oil is being exported, our forest is exploited, our bauxite, our manganese, all these things are important. And we need to address those. And it's going to be very difficult to address them when we cannot agree with simple matters of how to conduct an elections that are supervised, that the parties, let's face it, parties are also involved, not at the GCOM level, but you have party agents at every single polling booth. So let's hope we can get past that. Let's hope Aubrey Norton can be defined, both in relation to strengthening democracy, but also in helping in matters. I come back to this minimum wage. I think it's a major problem. I think we need to have an economy where including the villages, where there is so much unemployment, where people sign for money that they don't even receive below the minimum wage, where the village economies are being destroyed by properties being, it is being said sometimes it's easier for a Trinidadian or a Chinese to get land in Guyana than a Guyanese. Those are issues we've got to be concerned about as well.
And as we come down to the end of the program, let me get in the other panelists to give their closing thoughts. I'll start with you, Henry Jeffrey.
Thank you, David. Let me end as I more or less began. Guyanese must sit down and look carefully at the society in which they live. The minimum wage problem only become a minimum wage problem because the party of one ethnic group decided that will be the minimum wage and nothing can stop it. The law, the constitution you have at the present does not stop it. They don't even make it so that they have to have some sort of sensible discourse. You can not even talk to the opposition leader in a divided country when you are a party of an ethnic majority in the system. You can't even talk. You can decide you are not talking and nothing can happen. You can decide that that's the minimum wage and the other side just got to sit there. You need another way of looking at Guyanese politics. This happens. People do what they want because they can. But you couldn't do that in Switzerland because you have people got to sit on a table and agree, or they know next year perhaps it can change. You don't have the system to run a majoritarian system like England. America is finding out that right now. You do not have it. And therefore, if for 60 years we are going to just sit back and wait, and as my friend Clement said, and then finally race will disappear. Well, I think in the long run, we are all dead.
Well, I'm looking here at breaking news on Village Voice, saying that the government minister calls for Chancellor and the other judge who voted in the majority to be dismissed. Local government minister Nigel Darren has publicly called for the dismissal of the Chancellor of the Judiciary, Janet Cummins, and Justice Don Gregory, who voted one way. And my goodness, me, Adam Harris, help us here, help us here.
That's the kind of thing we were talking about all along. Our politics is one of confrontation. And then Dr. Jeffrey just said, we do things because we can. Now, there you go. A decision that the government doesn't like, and one minister decides that they should be. First of all, he knows the president can't dismiss them. But he isn't bright enough to get that into his head. They must be dismissed because they vote against the government. Confrontational politics. So, anyhow, the bottom line, though, is that, and I understand what Mr. Ram has been saying, and we've been saying for years, we need to work on a system. But Dr. Jeffrey saying, it's not going to happen. You're not going to follow in the footsteps of Rohi. It's not going to happen because, first of all, we grew up in homes that teach us division against the other ethnic group. Statement of fact. There are few mixed marriages. The people can tell you the reaction of members of the family. It wasn't, oh, we welcome you with open arms. Some of them just hated you because of how you look. So that's the country we live in. The grandchildren might look a little funny as a result of the mixed marriage. But because they're children, most of the grandparents can accept them. But they're not going to accept the other mixed party easily. And that goes all the way down the line, all the way to elections and what have you. And when you vote outside of the particular ethnic group, you're ostracized. I've heard statements made against some people in one political party or other. This little girl, Joretta Fernandes, talked about Kwame McCoy making statements about her ethnicity. On yesterday, a member of parliament accused Anand Prasad of making racist statements against him. So it's a mindset. And that's not going to change. I'm going to go to my grave, and this will continue. Yes, we will have some tolerance. But when it comes to the bread and butter, you're not going to change.
Christopher, your closing thoughts?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I hope it's a long time before Adam Harris goes to his grave. I must come back, Mr. Moderator. The topic is putting the Aubrey Norton victory in perspective.
Yes,
I think it would have helped if we'd stuck a little bit more to that. On this statement, I'm glad you raised this issue. I'm glad you raised this issue. All right, I'm glad you raised this issue about what a minister has said. I'm not going to say alleged to have said. That's not confrontation, but that is, as Adam Harris said, that is complete, utter ignorance. It is abuse of power, and it must be challenged as such. I hear about, Adam just talk about, and this is what we're talking about, talk versus action. Lots of us are very capable of talking and talking and talking. If someone made a racist remark, take him to the Ethnic Relations Commission, if there is one. We are not fighting for one. We didn't talk about that. Bring a private criminal charge, as I did against Barra Jagdeo. That's what we've got to do. We talk too damn much and do too little. That's my closing comment.
And there you have it. Christopher M says we talk too much and we do very little. Aubrey Norton says that he's going to put all the cards on the table and confront the government, both in words and action. And I assume he will get the support of Brother Christopher Ram to do less talk and more action. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you guests tonight. It's been a spirited conversation. The audience was quite large tonight, larger than normal. And I hope we have given enough food for thought as we go forward in the coming weeks. On Thursday, of course, we're going to have Aubrey Norton himself on, and I will ask him to deal with some of these very subjects that we deal with tonight. Stanley Ming is going to be on, and tomorrow night I will be on solo and be giving you my unvarnished views on these and other issues. I start tomorrow in dealing with another of these pompous little boys. Another of these pompous little boys, Nigel Dharamlal or whatever. These boys, these little boys, they believe Guyana belongs to them. And they believe we on this side are Mickey Mouses. You understand? They really feel that they get the measure of us. They can walk all over us and do what they like and say what they like. And this is one on the opposition side. You all ain't gonna walk on. Toe to toe. Toe to toe. Toe to toe tomorrow night. See you all. Good night.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.